Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode number 117, and Maggie and I are back. Our primary focus today is to return to our discussion of our Pride and Prejudice episode. We were making great progress in defining what we wanted to be in episode 1 of the series, which, of course, we are intending and hoping to be a way to introduce folks to what we're doing, to make a more highly produced and condensed sort of case study for adaptation, the kind of adaptation studies that we have been advocating. Hi, Maggie. How are you?
Hi, Corey. Pretty good. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
You survived the fundraising week?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
It was pretty incredible. Well done.
It was a really fun day. It was a long day, but it was a fun day. So anyway, but before we get right,
excited to get into this.
Yeah, excited to get into this. But before we jump back into Pride and Prejudice, we had Maggie had noticed that another one of the Rings of Power little teaser videos dropped. You remember we spent some time talking about the sword and talking about the crown, right? So they did one for Elendil's sword. They did one for Morgoth's crown. And now they've released a third one.
Well, and again, a while ago. This was like a month ago. And we didn't know. Like, Corey and I are on a chat group of content creators. And like, this hasn't been a thing. Like,
yeah, no,
I don't really get. Oh, anyway, okay, Amazon, we know.
Yeah, or we don't, but we know that we don't know. So there we go. Anyway, so unfortunately, the link we have to this is just through their Instagram account, which like I can't even rewind on or anything. So like, and just by activating the page, I'm gonna refresh it to make it start again.
Do you think it's on TikTok? Like that has a scrub bar, doesn't it?
I don't know. Too much trouble.
We're just going to deal with it tonight.
We're just going to deal with it. Here it is on their Instagram page, and we will refresh and watch their little sword video. Or, sorry, staff video.
Staff video. I'm going to mute me here so I can watch it over there.
Oh, for the love of now that stupid sound is out. Okay. First of all, one of the things that immediately jumps out to me, having looked at the other two. So first of all, we see the overall trend here, right? We're towards artifacts. So like they're focusing on the artifacts. So with we've had
crown,
the sword, the crown, and the staff. But of course, through those, they're painting a really interesting picture, right? Of the kind of major, I wonder, are we going to get one for like Gil-galad's spear, for instance? Like what might come next is sort of beginning to suggest itself.
What else have we? Yeah, we haven't had anything from the elves.
From the elves, yeah. That's why I was just asking myself, like, what elf artifact would there be? The spear of Gil-galad is the one that immediately suggests itself. Especially as we begin to move towards the Last Alliance. We're not nearly there yet, but still we're getting there. So it's an interesting choice. The second thing, of course, that I notice in watching the video here is the obvious parallels with the crown video. The crown video and the sword video are not very much alike, apart from the fact, the general conceit of, starting with show a prop and do the whole trajectory, the whole from backstage production through, onto the set. that overall momentum was similar between the two of them. And we certainly get that same thing here. But here, the parallels were really close, right? From workshop to through the door to like walking across the parking lot and then handing from one hand to another in through the door. That was very, very closely parallel. I say parallel, but it wasn't exactly the same. One thing that really struck me, unsurprisingly, is that the lighting was very different. Like you notice all of the bright light shining off of and reflecting. Like if we watched, remember how we were focused on the shadows and all of the play with. We get the one shadow of the guy carrying the staff.
Which makes me think they're following a template. It makes me think that they have kind of an idea of what they're going for in these, because there's a bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking at there we go. Where's the shadow? Like
We're going from darkness.
Yeah, no,
into
look at the light.
light.
But like even the like going from darkness, like it wasn't that dark. And now the light is very light. Whereas again, everything was, it looked like they were handing it in a, like a back door of this. I mean, it was all very dark. Look at the light shining off. Oh, I missed it. Look at the light shining off of that, right? And then now here's the handing in. And notice like where it's handing from is like almost solid white light on the right-hand side, right? Into the darker studio. But then what we did not get in the crown video is this, right? We just saw it handed in, and there was that like kind of creepy exchange with the hands right on the crown, and then we just saw the crown itself sitting by itself amongst other props. And here we actually see, Daniel in his Gandalf costume, and he's even walking from shadow into light with light shining on his face. So yeah, the similarity with the crown, and the contrast, I think is pretty clear. What you say about a template is interesting because it feels almost like that again, and except the sword one didn't follow that, the template like that. It didn't feel templatey at all.
No. I wonder if they started with that one and they're like, actually, no, just do your assignment. Because it doesn't show us much, there's not really anything going on here. I was a little surprised at how simple the stuff looked. It didn't look like a gnarly raw root anymore. It looked highly polished.
It looks highly polished. Yeah. I mean, they still have the gnarly root thing. And I here's just where I've been doing this from the very beginning. It's fine. The visual nod to Gandalf's staff in Peter Jackson's film is fine. Their desire to create a kind of visual consistency between The Rings of Power and Peter Jackson's film is fine, but I don't love it and I've never loved it. Just want to say that.
Why?
Because I don't like there are enough restrictions for them to be operating under without adding that. And and I feel, I'm not sure that it hasn't backfired. Like the goal, it seems, as far as we understand it, the goal was to, make the sort of like transition from Peter Jackson's films into The Rings of Power as like seamless as possible, which failed. And I mean, I think it's safe to say that was not a seamless transition for very many people at all. And just to like make people feel more comfortable, like to feel like to make it feel like Middle Earth, because now Peter Jackson's film is Middle Earth, right? Visually. And if it's too different from that, then it won't feel like Middle Earth. But it from the start, I didn't love the thing. Now, again, I was about to use the word derivative. It's hard to call it derivative when John Howe is doing the art direction on Rings of Power.
But...
like how do you be derivative of yourself? Exactly. Anyway, I just...
No, I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I was just kind of wanted to hear you muse on it a bit because I kind of think I get where you're coming from. Of course, I understand why they went with this. They don't want to do anything that makes you feel like removed from the land. They're
Hmm.
already asking so much of this audience
Yes.
because we don't know the characters, we don't know the actors, we don't know these people. People will come to it because it says Lord of the Rings, but then they find something that they don't understand or don't get. So you might as well make it look right so they know where they are. Okay, a really
It
simplistic term, I get
it
that.
makes
Sure.
sense.
Yeah. But in terms of creative flexibility, I can see what you're saying of like, as soon as you have sequels to movies are never as good as the first is kind of the cliche, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to just replicate what you had in the first one. You're just stuck in that world and have to follow the same rules. Like, it's not quite rules, but I feel like it probably would hamper your style a little bit that they didn't get to actually muse about what Gandalf's staff would look like. They just
Right.
went with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I know like I am atypical in the sense that I know, I mean, I believe myself to be in like uh the bottom quartile of Tolkien fans as far as like amount of pure nostalgia I have for the films.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as evidence, like remember you remember my reaction to the first trailer of War of the Rohirrim, right, with the shots from the live action films, and everyone was like, oh, like oh,
And you were
like
like,
my
what?
heart swelled within me when I saw these shots again, and no, like when the first time I saw it, I rolled my eyes and was like, oh, good grief,
But we
like
had the same conversation.
yeah.
Like, I get
I
it.
get
I
it. I get
see
it.
why
I
you're
get it. And like I
replicating
said,
this
I
world.
understand I am not normal in this way. Like I am lower
I don't
quartile.
know if it's normal. It's more of just like you don't need it. So,
No.
but I think a ton of people do need it, or at least the studio thinks they need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, exactly. And speaking of studios, I have to admit that one of the things that strikes me about this video very differently from the others is that I'm still a little bit sad about the whole Gandalf thing. I really wish that they had been allowed to move forward with their initial
Yeah.
vision of the Blue Wizards.
Yeah.
The choice, which I'm 100% convinced was a studio choice to compel them to make the stranger Gandalf after season one.
Hmm.
I think I don't think I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's disastrous. I just think it's terribly disappointing, and it fills me a little like so when I see Daniel as Gandalf holding the staff and now with like the Gandalf hair and right, everything like it's in robe and like he was looking much more Gandalf like there, right? Um,
Yeah.
Instead of being excited, it just makes me a little wistful for what could have been. It makes me feel a little bit
Yeah, and
sad.
it just makes you wonder what other conversations went on and other creative juices that might be ebbed, not ebbed, stopped.
Yeah.
Like, you hear of these of Peter Jackson doing what he did because he didn't ask for a stupid amount of money. He just
Hmm.
asked for a lot of money and he was in New Zealand. So he's really far away from the studio heads.
Right.
So he kind of got to work in isolation and it was like, 1997 to 99. So it was way before all this instant communication
Hmm. Hmm.
and constant updates that we have now. So he kind of got to do this creativity in his own way, in his own space.
Yeah.
They're not getting to do that.
No, they're not.
They're under such a watchful eye of not just all the fans who have instant access to leaks and everything else, but also the studio that spent the most money ever spent on something with a leader that is a huge Tolkien fan. So there's a lot of like ideas and opinions that they probably have to manage and
Hmm.
can't just follow their own gut.
Hmm. Yeah. JJ's asking, is it more or less disappointing than Halbrand being Sauron? More. For me, it's more. For me, it's more because because I miss what I'm losing more.
Mm,
I do miss. I liked Halbrand's character. I like the idea of Halbrand's character. I think that would have been fun. Um, uh, but I miss the Blue Wizards more.
mm,
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wish the Blue Wizards more, and I think that a lot of the um, a lot of the challenges that they're going to face and that they're going to have to face now in the Gandalf story is going to be didn't have to happen. Didn't like
Well,
this? Yeah.
and premature, right? Like, and the other thing that, makes me a little concerned is that we know they had scripted seasons one and two really, or one really carefully, started
Yes.
scripting two during the pandemic, and then potentially had this change. So, did they have all the writers in the room? Were they able to do as thoughtful and as considered of a workshop to get that script together for the storyline of Gandalf and
Hmm.
how they bring that in and incorporate it and what changes, what have we lost in the next two, three seasons? So just that whole trajectory, how much did this decision change everything else we could have got? Because that's where it starts to happen. You just shave off little bits, like, oh, can you just do that? Well, if I just do that, it's like give a mouse a cookie. Just the whole
Yes.
house
Then
just.
yeah, the whole it's the ripple effects for down the
Mhm.
road of even small decisions. So yeah, I mean there's it's going to be awkward. It's going to be awkward integrating Gandalf into the Rings of Power story in this mode at this time. Um, you know, yeah, that's going to be awkward. And again, it's not my problems are not the problems of simple deviation from what Tolkien wrote. For instance, like about Gandalf arriving around the year 1000 and getting the Ring of Power from Círdan, when he gets off the boat. Like, I'm not bothered by that because, first of all, that is a story Tolkien barely wrote and wrote
Mhm.
very late, right? So, like, it's not like that's an essential part of Gandalf's story. In fact, that's arguably the last part of Gandalf's story, like that Tolkien ever in. Like Gandalf's history goes back much further than that one little retcon nugget that Tolkien wrote later on. So it's deviating from that, like saying like, nope, that's not how it's going to happen. Like that's not how he's going to arrive. That's not how he's going to get his ring. That doesn't bother me. Like the simple
Mhm.
fact of deviation doesn't bother me. What bothers me, well, again, or rather, again, what makes me a little bit sad is just that like it's gonna be more difficult. Like it's gonna be
Mhm.
I mean, they can still do interesting things. Like I still think that JD and Patrick are like interesting enough storytellers that they can work with this. And I
Of
think
course.
that we can see them already making some interesting, and sometimes cool stuff comes when you are dealing with unexpected restrictions or
Yeah.
changes or something like that.
Incredible strengths can come from a pivot,
Yeah.
but you also worry that will this make them like question other decisions that they make or be hesitant in something that they wouldn't have been hesitant on before. I hope not. I hope
Yeah.
they just run with it and go, okay, pivot, let's
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. A.D. Pirtle is saying he doesn't care about Gandalf coming early. He hates that they're seemingly telling the Blue Wizard story. That's the tragedy, A.D. Pirtle.
Yeah.
They were telling the Blue Wizard story. They were Blue Wizards, both of them. Those were the two Blue Wizards. We met the two Blue Wizards last season. But they were they had to make him Gandalf. So now he's Gandalf. Now it's Gandalf and one other random wizard who is probably still a blue wizard. But it's just so yeah. I mean, and I don't mind in a sense. I don't mind that like actually Eddie Pirtle like. The more we get the story of the Blue Wizards, the happier I'll be. Like the more I can kind of squint and pretend he's not Gandalf, and like think of this as like the more I feel like I can try to see what was the story of the Blue Wizard that
Yeah.
we're not getting, and the more I can try to the more clearly I can imagine the story that we would have gotten had he not been made into Gandalf, the better I'll be pleased. But
I feel like our next interview with JD and Patrick is going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. Look, and here's the thing, like. I'm never going to try to nail them down to this because it's unkind even to ask them because they can't talk about it. They
Well,
can't.
and never broadcast,
No.
but I would certainly want to like sit down and have a coffee and be like, what was that like? Talk us
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, anyway, so I guess that's inevitably like this is why like the more any of their marketing, and I know a great deal of their marketing is going to go in this direction. Any of their marketing that is like Gandalf is gonna like it's gonna trigger this like
irk you.
this sadness
Yeah.
in me. So I'm just like it's something I'm gonna have to deal with. I'm gonna be dealing with this over the course of the next year. Hopefully that
We're here
means
for you,
that
Corey.
like
We're here
by
for
the
you.
time the season 3 drops, I'll be okay. I mean, I was coping with this during the course of last season, obviously, but yeah.
And we know that they've finished primary filming, and we're kind of assuming they're following the same timelines that they have
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So we would expect
Yes,
an
I
autumn
have received no
drop again.
information, but assuming
Yeah,
something
we don't
like a
know anything
September
yet,
drop.
but that's our
Yeah.
guess so far. So
Yeah.
we shall see. But yeah, as ever, as things pop up, we will talk about them. But should we spend a little bit of time
Absolutely.
bulleting
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice?
Let's go back to Pride and Prejudice. So, all right, we were getting my Pride and Prejudice. So I've got it up on screen here.
Got it.
So don't type anything too embarrassing in this live document here. Okay.
I only did that once, Corey. Let it go.
It's all good. It's all good.
My shopping list.
Yeah. So okay. So we nailed down the basic the order and content. We got the outline pretty well. So what we wanted to do was come back and kind of flesh it out a little bit so that we'd be ready, like bullet points and stuff. Okay. So
We've never actually done this together, come up with bullet points together.
No,
So I think
we always
that
do
will
separate
also be fun.
segments.
We always do separate stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for the subsequent episodes or like chunks of it, we probably will
Right.
because we'll have actual clips to
Yep.
look at that I think we probably will split that up. But for this first one, this is like our bookend.
This is really
so.
us together. Yeah, totally. Agreed. Okay, so as I recall, and this was happening towards the end of our discussion last time, we were drifting towards making the open, instead of the opening just being like, hey, little introduction to who we are and what we're doing. The opening is like really meaty.
Yeah, it's gotten a little bit deeper as to like
Yeah.
intentions, why we're doing this,
Yeah.
why we're the ones telling you about it, and the complications that we've encountered in our own experiences and exercises. So it is a little bit bigger than just Pride and Prejudice. It's a little bit more of like a mission statement.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so the bullet points that you have here, actually that first bullet point is like at least 2 bullet points, right? First is just introductions, who we are.
Yeah.
The second one is why we started this. We're not picking a fight. We're offering a chance to ask questions and enjoy. And we might as well admit that we are in fact advocating for a particular approach to adaptation. Like we're not on the one hand, like we're not exactly trying to, convert people to a particular way of looking at things, but we are kind of, we are advocating something.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of saying, give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah. Give it a try.
Attempt to like it.
Exactly. Like, here's why it's interesting and fun, not only to watch adaptations, but to watch them with an open view, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next bullet point isn't exactly a separate point for us, but more of a reminder of focus, right? Of like when we do write the script, to be positive, not negative, right? To not be saying like, here's the horrible way to talk about things that we think is awful, but rather to be saying I
think we're pretty good at that generally.
Yeah, but it's a good reminder to have because
we don't just go straight to slander.
Yeah. Not straight. We'll get there eventually, but not.
Well, I say that because that's how most people get their clicks, right? They love a slander. People,
Yes.
It's so easy to criticize. It's harder to find the silver lining. So
Yes.
that's what we're in here for.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay.
So then, next is when we say this is what we're going to be doing, like what our intention is in this series. An exercise in adaptation, looking at examples to understand them. Wait, hang on. That's kind of a description of Other Minds and Hands originally. Because we are going to get around to what we're doing and what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on. So before we talk about that, we should probably we should we should segue to okay. We should segue to because I think we want to talk about our general principles. Like we don't want to start talking about the series and then like what we're going to do in this series and then be like, let's talk about some adaptation terminology. Like that's not it. We want to go straight from here is what we're doing in this series to why Pride and Prejudice, right? Like that's that should be the transition. So okay.
Well, I mean, some of this is still, it can just happen in that second bullet point. Why we're doing this.
Yes. Well, I'm trying to make our individual bullet points less meaty.
Okay.
Because really meaty bullet points aren't good for actually speaking off of.
Right.
Really meaty bullet points are like a 45-minute segment of their on their own, a 45-minute rambling segment, which is what I'm trying to avoid. I know myself too well to know that
I know, like for some of us, a meaty sentence is exactly all you need to do.
Well, it is always. I have always found it true. Always, always, always found it true. The more detailed my notes are, the shorter my talk will be. That's why, like, if I'm giving a really like compressed talk, I will tend to script it almost entirely, because if I leave myself room to expand, I'll expand. And anyway, yeah. So Phil, this is what we're doing here is the plan for this first episode. This is the first episode plan here, because the second episode we're going to begin with the actual analysis of scenes, like of our plot beats. So what we're doing.
He's also telling me we'll probably have two separate documents. Like you'll have one and I'll have one with a lot more notes on it. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we want to get from we aren't picking a fight, we're offering a chance to ask questions and enjoy, to introducing this particular project? Because we want to go between there, we want to go through our interpretations, definitions, adaptation terminology, challenging the idea of a one-to-one thing. Like that's all. That's what comes next. So let's talk about. So we just said what we're advocating for, right?
Yep.
A chance to enjoy and find the adaptation interesting, even if you don't like it. You don't have to love it as an adaptation, and you can always love the book more. You always have that option. But we find that it is very interesting and rewarding to take a different approach to adaptation. So the obvious next segue is what makes our approach different.
Yeah.
Right. We say we're advocating for a different approach. What makes it different? What makes it different is, well, hang on. Let's just start doing it first. Can we go to the one-to-one idea next? So
where?
Like we want to challenge the book to film one-to-one idea and how that isn't doable.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Because it is like, I would say like the first thing, like if people said like, well, like, what are you talking about? How we talk about adaptation? It's like, well, first we have to think about this. Like, what is an adaptation?
Anytime you ever Google it, all you find is comparison charts of book versus film.
Yes.
It's
exactly.
not a versus. We're not looking for a versus.
Right, exactly. And we can judge it by how faithful it is, by what percentage of the book gets included, or how much gets changed, or something, or something like that. So, starting with that, So when people analyze adaptation, when they think about the relationship between the book and the film, there is a tendency to think about it in this kind of a checklist way. Mm-hmm. That defines faithfulness by, including as much as possible from the film in the book, changing as little as possible from the book in the film. And that
isn't what makes a good film.
Right. We believe that this is a deeply flawed approach from the beginning. So this is a slightly unfortunate typo there.
Oh no, sorry. Oh, come on, that was pretty funny.
It is a little bit funny. Anyway, so I think what we, because, and this actually, I mean, I remember talking about this like kind of checklist thing, right? Near the very beginning when we were starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing we do from there is the reminder of what is an adaptation, right? Then an adaptation is a work of art on its own. Like, you are not just somehow turning a book into a movie. You are making a movie or
It has to
or a
stand
show.
alone.
You're making a film. Yeah. You're making a film that has to stand alone. It has to be a good work of filmic art on its own. And that means that first and foremost, when you're talking about adaptations, it is important to appreciate it for itself. It is important to appreciate it on those grounds. We will be, and we strongly encourage the consideration of the relationship between the two works of art. But they are two works of art. And from there, we can then segue to the like, and furthermore, there's a deep misconception. There's another deep misconception that lies behind that. One misconception is that the film is not an independent work of art. It's just like a new medium for the same work of art. But that's never true. The second misconception is the idea that you can do the one-to-one, like,
Right.
push the book through a film projector, right?
Yeah.
That isn't possible. And the more you try to do that, the worse film you're going to make. Because films and books are very different art forms, and they tell stories in very different ways and have completely different sets of tools.
See, then that feels like it is kind of a natural space to do some like 101 terminology, but I do kind of want to go straight into what and why Pride and Prejudice. So where
No,
does
I
that...
think we can pause and do. I think I hear what you're saying, but I think we can do some more here. I still think this is the most logical way.
Yeah. And
And
this is going to be kind of our only opportunity to really get the chunk of
the like
this in
totally
here.
theoretical stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Once we start talking about Pride and Prejudice, we're going to be focused on either doing analysis or preparing the specific analysis of Pride and
Right.
Prejudice. Right. This is our preamble. Right. Okay. So then having talked about those two core misconceptions, one, the misconception that the adaptation is just a derivative art form, like it's the same art form somehow shifted into a different medium. And the second misconception is that it's possible to just take
Hmm.
the book and make it and transform it into a film in its own way. So
What was your first point again? Sorry. 120 isn't actually possible. The first one was...
the first one was that the idea that the unspoken concept that the film adaptation is not a separate work of art, that it is
Mm.
merely an extension of, or sort of a translation of, the original work of art. Okay. Yes. Now, from there, then we could go and say, as I was saying, the two modes, when we talk about the one-to-one, the two modes, books and films, have very different tools. We should say one of the things that we're going to be most interested in doing in this series is understanding those storytelling tools better, and how films and books tell their stories. We're going to be examining that pretty closely during this series. But then we could say, so what does it mean then, to consider an adaptation as a work of art on its own? What do we need? And so this is where we want to I'm segueing towards terminology and things.
Yeah.
Apart from categories of adaptation, I would start with categories of adaptation and say, like, one thing, that we've noticed in trying to discuss this is really important is that not all adaptations are even attempting to do the same thing. There are many different kinds of relationships that an adaptation can have with its source text. And if you lump all adaptations into the same category, you can really miss out on the fact that they're really attempting to do radically different things, and so it doesn't really make sense to think about them in the same way. So we have identified 3 core categories for adaptations: direct adaptations, fill in the blanks adaptations, and modulations. So that's the first piece of terminology that we can bring.
And then we'll talk about each.
Yeah, we can talk about each a little bit. We don't need to go into great detail, but we'll give some illustrations.
And I think a simple definition-ish for each would be helpful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do that off the top of my head. A direct adaptation is an adaptation that is attempting to recreate a very similar narrative to the original. Like, it's just, you're retelling the story in a different mode, but you're retelling the same story. It's like simply
you're taking the same bullet points. You're
You're
not
taking
adding anything.
You're taking
not
the established
subtracting.
story and you're retelling that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a direct adaptation. A fill in the blanks adaptation is one where you are writing a story within a world, right? That may deal with events that are alluded to or something, but which is not the main story. Like, things you have to make stuff up, but you're making them up within the world of, that was established and in contact with the story, with the original story.
Yeah.
And then the modulation adaptation is where you are, usually it's retelling the story, but basically you're retelling the story, or you're recasting the characters or something, but you're doing it within a totally different, like, you're transplanting it into a completely different narrative context.
And I'm making this face because I'm like, I want to be able to clearly say why we think that's different than an inspired by story, because there is like the known terminology, and I think we might need to acknowledge the known terminology.
Yeah,
And be like, this just didn't quite fit.
I have to admit that I find the known terminology not very satisfactory.
No, it's really limiting.
It's really limiting, and also totally fuzzy. Like, based upon, I don't find really strong correlations. Like, I don't find myself accurately prepared for what I am going to receive by the thing I see at the beginning of the film. If they say based on or inspired by, or, like, I've seen some which are like inspired by, but I feel are quite close. I feel are dealing with the text very carefully. I feel in others that it's just like the vaguest excuse to, like, use the character, use the trademarks, and then we're going to do something totally different. So I find those really unreliable, is what I find. But basically, yes. I mean, I think that there is, with modulations, I think that there is a real continuum there. I mean, I think that, there are some that are very, very close ones. The Shakespeare ones are, I think, the ones that come obvious, most obviously. Like Clueless, again, is a classic example in this genre. But I think that there are far looser things than that, which could have really just kind of a parallel to the original story, like a looser parallel to the original story, without actually being considered, anything like as as close in like plot structure and character choice as
Hmm.
something like Clueless or West Side Story or something like that. Um, but yeah, I'm comfortable like making that category like fairly inclusive, right?
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think of a good example of like a modern story which is like loosely paralleled to like a Shakespeare play. But it's not really a retelling of the Shakespeare play. It's not the plot, the full plot of the
Mm.
Shakespeare play, but it just kind of play.
Plays with it.
Yeah, just kind of adopts it as a sort of uh,
Have you seen, I'm sure I've mentioned this on this before, but have you seen Inside Number Nine,
no, I
The League
haven't.
of Gentlemen? When we're together, I'll show you this episode. But there's 9 seasons of this show. They're
Hmm.
British comedians, very dark humor, wildly inappropriate at
Hmm.
times. But they did this Inside Number Nine series, and there's one episode where they're in a hotel corridor, and there's 8 or 9, probably 9 rooms on the hallway, and the whole thing is an iambic pentameter, and the absolute melee of confusion of who's in what rooms, and the 9 swoops around to a 6, and it just plays on all these little tropes, but it just feels so Shakespearean. But it's not specifically Shakespearean. There's little allusions. You can tell all of them are incredibly well trained in Shakespeare and know their
Right,
text. But yeah, that's the only one I can think of that is like clearly Shakespearean without being at all Shakespearean.
right. Actually, Phil brings up an interesting example. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead is an interesting example of an
Mm,
adaptation, which an adaptation of Hamlet, which is I would consider that a modulation adaptation of
yeah.
Hamlet. It's also like kind of fill in the blanks too, but it's not really a rigid fill in the blanks, but in the sense like they're not restrained in ways that fill in the blanks adaptations generally like
Hmm.
kind of need to be constrained, by the world and it's yeah. But anyway, yes, yeah, that's uh, yeah, yeah, um,
Okay.
yeah,
So we've got all right, that's good. So kinds of adaptations, types, relationships. We'll reference terminology, but we won't get sucked into it. We're just gonna say it didn't satisfy what we wanted it to do.
are
It's not even just that it didn't satisfy, it's just that there's so much more nuance to it that nobody's really put names to,
mhm,
that it's been fun to kind of
yeah.
play around with that.
Are there other basic terms that we want to introduce here so that we don't have to later on? Do we want to talk about the whole like book and film thing that we're gonna? We haven't even talked about the fact that we're doing a mini series and a feature film, so it would seem a little weird maybe to introduce it yet.
I think, well, that's making me think the structure stuff. I think kind of like up here, introductions, why listen to us. We need one more here saying what we're about to do. Like,
Right.
what
Yes.
is this thing?
Let's
So
not
not
bury the
just
lead
why we're doing this,
completely.
but like this series is about, and maybe that can be where we pull up some of this stuff,
Yes.
intention. This is what we're gonna do. We shouldn't say how many because we might change our minds, but like this will
This
be a
series,
series.
right? We are doing a case study of the analysis of adaptation, and
I'll
we
mute myself.
are
I'm doing auto
hoping
typing.
to we're hoping both to model how to do careful analysis of an adaptation and its relationship to the original text, while also we hope uh, like actually being an interesting analysis of Pride and Prejudice as well. We haven't talked about Pride and Prejudice. I don't want to name it, but um, like, this isn't just a teaching class. Like we're actually gonna. I guess saying we're gonna do a case study is does show that we're gonna does say that we're gonna do an actual study. Um, yeah, yeah. Deep diving into one work in various forms, um, to do close analysis and to think through how this story works in its different forms. Yes. JJ, I'm wondering about that. JJ asks the excellent question. Any discussion of critfic? Like, do I want to talk about that? I don't think so. I mean, it is true that it's a kind of a side. It's an important issue, but it's also, I think, a little bit of a side issue. I think the core idea there is simply that we need to keep the focus on the text itself instead of just speculating about the motivations of the people who are making the works of art. That's the core of the critfic objection, that if your analysis is always, here's what they were trying to do, then, or like, here's why this is bad, it is shocking. Like my critfic objection is just, it is absolutely shocking the percentage of the times people jump straight to trying to explain why something is bad without ever actually explaining what is bad about it. Without doing the analysis to say, here is what makes it bad, and here is why, and let me show you and explain what the problem is. They jump straight, even without thinking about it, even without realizing it, even just in their vocabulary. That's, again, to cite an example, this is what, an example that C.S. Lewis used. My critfic objection is derived from C.S. Lewis's observations, is that people will criticize a passage in a piece of writing by calling it rushed. That's not a criticism of the writing. That is a theory about what made it bad, not an explanation of what makes it bad. You think you're saying something about the work, but you're not actually saying something about the work. You're saying something about what you theorize made the author write that badly, right? Similarly, like, and just think of all the people whose response to the Rings of Power was, they're just so clueless.
Yeah.
Right? It's like so many people who go in that direction, right? They're so
cool. They have no idea what they're doing.
They have no idea what they're doing, right? And it's like, okay, so you're observing that something is bad, and you're not saying what you think is bad. You're saying why you think it's bad. And of course, you're quite wrong. Like, they do know what they're doing, and they are not at all clueless about Tolkien. They know more about Tolkien than 99% of the people criticizing.
But you are having trouble with their execution.
Exactly. And this is not in any way to say that there is nothing wrong, that there's nothing to be objected to. It's just that's almost never the conversation that happens. That's my critfic argument.
Yeah, and I don't want to like fall down the rabbit hole of being critical of others' processes.
Exactly.
Right. It's too easy to just like do that.
It is really easy to do that.
But if what we can do is stay to the positive side of it and say, well, we aren't going to do a comparison of A versus B. Here's what we're doing instead. Then that kind of negates that kind of discussion.
Yeah, I think that as far as this segment is, like, this element is concerned, this moment in this episode is concerned, I think we just focus on just doing it right, basically, rather than talking about the way that it is so often done wrong. Yes. Yeah. Because again, it's so easy to be like, I had a negative reaction to that, and so therefore it is wrong. Right. And since it is wrong, they must be wrong-minded who made it. And so therefore, like...
there's so many different levels in that, too, of just like, I think some people just find it so much easier to do that, shut down, and then make fun of, rather than engage with. So it gives them a superiority. There's a certain level of protection of the work they think they're creating. There's a lot of like psychology wrapped up in that. Oh my goodness,
there's so much.
I don't want to touch with a barge pole for this. Right.
It's almost like virtue signaling, and I mean, like, it makes you feel righteous. You're the defender of Tolkien, right? If you're, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be.
And it becomes ego very quickly, especially if you're in a group of other people that feel strongly about this thing, because you are the one that is most righteous, and it does become a competition. And And that's fine for those that enjoy it, but we never have, and it's definitely not something I would want to put in like a showcase episode of what we're
Yeah.
capable of
No, I
doing.
think we just, with all of those things, I think we just set out to self, but it is worth thinking about, like, are there things that we can spotlight in our positive approach in a positive way,
Hmm.
because we know that they are really common.
Okay, so just thinking about that, why we're doing this, we're advocating for our approach. We might not say it in those words, but like that's kind of what we want to describe here. We want to do this to bring a positive engagement with the process of adaptation.
Yeah.
It might not be what you were picturing, it might cut your favorite scene, but
Right.
you still have the chance to enjoy this story in a way you haven't enjoyed it before, and the book will still be the book. Like it's not going to
Absolutely.
muck it up for you.
Absolutely. Um, yes. Yes. Yeah. I think one thing that might be worth talking about, again, addressing all of what you were just talking about how easy it is and how many clicks it will get you to be outraged and everything, and how virtuous it can make you feel to be outraged. Um, One thing that we might want to, like, we've talked about in the past, like I remember we talked about this a lot back in season 1 of Rings and Realms, um, wanting to bring back nuance instead of just outrage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about how, like, we find that it is that although it is much more difficult to explain what is good and interesting about something than it is to complain about things, it's much more rewarding, right? So I think in, like, I'm thinking maybe in, like, here when we're talking about advocating our approach, like, this is where I'm thinking that kind of thing could go, to talk about how much more rewarding it is to
Mm-hmm.
do a nuanced study and to see positively what people are doing and what makes stories interesting, compared to merely automatically complaining about them. Um, Even though it's hard, like, it's more work. It's much more work to explain what's good about something than it is to
Mm-hmm.
complain about what you don't like.
And there's an element too, I think, that we've always pushed for of just inviting the curiosity. Like, let's ask that question. Why do
Hmm.
you think they made that decision?
Yeah,
What do you see here? You know, just making it more of a safe space to converse, like we have in our little tagline.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yes. Okay. Um,
Mm.
okay.
All right, I
Um,
won't get rid of this summary part yet,
yeah.
so we have a chance to kind of compare the two, but how do we feel about those bullet points bit?
Good. Um,
We haven't finished, obviously.
no. From here we go to, um, after we talk about the kinds of adaptations, because that's a sort of illustration of the, I mean, it's not that, like, we absolutely must establish this, because in fact we're going to only talk about direct adaptations for the whole rest of the series, right? But this is kind of an illustration of, it's worth talking about because we need, like, we're trying to push towards, like, let us sit back and, like, think about adaptation. We're modeling thinking about adaptations as works of art, right? First and
Yeah.
foremost. Um, uh, so in fact, let's use that as a transition after that. Like, so, like, once you realize what kind of work of art, a particular adaptation is, we can then begin to really think. So I would do this as a, I would move that up. Yeah. Um, uh, Once you realize what kind of work of art a particular adaptation is, now we can begin the process of really thinking about it carefully
Mm.
and appreciating and examining its relationship with the original text. This
So
exact
understanding the kind of art opens the door to studying it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like basically, again, what we're like. This is us illustrating from the beginning, like, you have to consider an adaptation as a work of art on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem dumb to, like, talk about a painting without first acknowledging this is a painting. Right. And therefore, like, there are some things that it's doing and some things that it's not trying to do. Right.
That's a really good example because you're like, well, is it acrylic, oil, watercolor?
Right.
You know, like,
and even like what
exactly.
genre of painting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or like, you know, you're looking at a little like cameo picture and being like, it doesn't give me the full sense of the landscape. Well, no, it doesn't,
kidding.
because it's a little cameo picture, right? Like, it's not trying to do that. So again, like, it's in order to understand a work of art on its own grounds, like, you need to first.
How have we not used this comparison before? Like, that's a great comparison.
Yeah. So we we're, but then once we do that, we do want to, like, the thing that we're not saying is that you can't. Okay, no, we don't want to say what we're not saying. We want to say what we're saying. And what we're saying is, next we go and we examine carefully what is the relationship between the adaptation and the original text. Mm-hmm. And this is now where we allude back to the what we were, the trend of book versus film stuff that we were doing, right? We say that the question, when you're looking at an adaptation, the question isn't just like, back to the checklist, right? It's totally inadequate to say, is this event in the book included in the film? Like,
Right.
that doesn't tell you anything about
It's
the
not the
work of
point.
art, right?
Yeah.
Instead, what we want to talk about is choices. What are the choices that are being made? There will be choices. You have to make tons of choices in making an adaptation. What choices are they making, and what are the patterns of those choices? And this will include choices like what to include and what not to include, what characters to cut and what characters to keep, what events to change, you know, whether to shift chronology, right, or compress things. Like, there's all kinds of choices that have to be made before you even get into the individual, like, nitty gritty choices of, like, what color dress is she wearing in this scene, which the original might not tell you, right?
But seeing it on screen.
But she
could
has to be
tell us
wearing
a lot.
something, so like,
And it
or
could
it's
be
a very
very
strong choice
message,
indeed.
you know? Like, a scarlet red is going to be very different than a muddy brown. Like,
For sure.
I'm going to infer something from that.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. So I think introducing, because this is obviously the question of choices, right? This is a major piece of our vocabulary that we'll want to orient them to at the beginning. And that, of course, without saying the negative thing, that goes straight against the impulse to say things like, this is right or wrong, and instead saying, what are the choices?
I just put it back up in bullet point
Just
two,
to
too.
allude to it, use the word
so we
at the
mention it.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, good. Good. So this, I think then I would want to go on and say that, like, what this means. When we're thinking about the relationship between an adaptation and the original text, we really have to consider them side by side and on, as it were, equal grounds. What choices are being made in the original in order to try to tell this story?
In order to tell us. And that's why we've picked out beat points.
Yeah. What is the original story? What is the story being told? What are the choices that the author is making? What is the story being told in the film? And what are the choices being made in the film? And comparing and contrasting those two things. And then from that, building to questions like to being able to see trends in character, trends in theme that may be similar, That may be different. That may be in a much more complicated, kind of discussion with each other. And that's where the magic is. That's where the fun is in analyzing adaptations, is when you're able to get to that point. And that's what we're doing in this series.
I kind of think it's going to be something like, so we're going to walk you through and kind of bring it into that.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing that through textual analysis, visual film analysis, and comparing and contrasting story beats from the text into the film.
Yes.
This is not a one-to-one comparison. This is an element of the story that is vital. Or vital? That seems like a very emotional word.
Well, and vital tends to mean like essential or super important, which is not
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about like living, right? Like that is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm okay if we just focus on this first bit for right now, too. Like,
Yeah.
let's get this first part good. If we want to film this next week or whenever we can before we move on. But I feel like knowing this first bit is going to be pretty strong. And we still need to go through, like, which bit are you going to do? Which bit am I going to do? What are our backgrounds going to look like? Just a little bit of that kind of stuff. But content-wise, this feels like a real good run-through. And I also have no problem with, like, next time being a dress rehearsal.
Yes.
And we do a quick click record and see what we get.
Yes.
And it'll probably be like, oh, no, hang on. We shouldn't have said that. And we probably should do that. And we'll see.
Yeah.
Because we're on next week. We're not on the following week.
That is correct.
So maybe next week is dress rehearsal. Then we've got a little bit of time for me to clean up stuff.
Yeah. I do think after this, it gets a little bit simpler. Not perfectly simple, but a little bit simpler.
It's more informational, too. Like,
Yeah.
we just want to take you through why we're looking
But we
at
were
Pride
also
and
talking
Prejudice.
about all of this, right? That was the other conclusion that we came to last week, that we want all of sections 1 through 4 to be a build-up to the storytelling methods, to the analysis
Right.
that we're actually going to do, so that we do
Right.
we do meaty analysis within this episode and not just talking.
And we're going to try to be as concise as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So
This
and
is
I don't
pretty
mean that
precise.
in-
Like this,
Yeah.
what we've just outlined is like 2 minutes, like of
Yeah.
actual discussion. Like it's not going to be that. Okay, it might be no more than 5. I bet you no more
I mean,
than
like
5.
for funsies, do you want to try to do just the opening bit and see how we feel with it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it would be something along the lines of like, hi, my name is Corey Olsen, and I'm known online as the Tolkien professor.
And I'm Dr. Maggie Parke. I'm known for adaptations and studying them.
That's right. And you might have watched us before on other things that we've done, such as Rings and Realms
And Realms, Other Minds and Hands.
and Other
where we
Minds and
take-
Hands.
And the reason that we started doing some of this is because we wanted a better way to study adaptation. We want to take a look at adaptations on their own as an independent piece of art, and to take a look at the choices of the filmmakers and not just be reactive to changes, but to discuss why there are changes and make it a friendly and lovely chat.
A friendly chat. That's right. Because we think it is so much more fun at the end, although it's easier. I won't talk about getting clicks. Although it's much easier to complain about to complain about what you don't like about something. It is much more fun and much more rewarding, though also much more difficult to do careful analysis and find and explore what something is doing and to discover what it's doing really well.
And the beauty of engaging in this kind of work means that you stand the chance of still loving the original text, nothing will be changed, but possibly also loving this piece of art that is taken from your original beloved text. So you get the opportunity to love both things.
And in my experience, even a bad adaptation is something that can contribute, if you're thinking it through like this, can contribute to your increased appreciation of the original text, even if you don't like the adaptation at all.
I'm like, we might play that one down a little bit because I'd like Netflix or Disney or somebody to hire us to do this for them. So we don't be like, your adaptation sucks, but we're going to make it fun to study.
That's right. That's true. Even when your adaptation sucks, it's okay. We're just showing how low the stakes are.
Okay, carrying on.
Okay,
I
right,
think
yeah,
that was
true,
really good.
true. Okay,
How we're different.
how we're different. Then we go into different. Okay, so let's start off by talking about. Let's start off by clarifying the fact that when we talk about discussing adaptations, we're going to be taking a very different approach from how adaptations are very often talked about around the internet. The standard trend, right, is to sort of do a kind of a point by point comparison. A lot of people will make bullet lists of things that are in the book that are not in the film, or things that are in the film that are not in the
Anytime you
book.
Google it, that's exactly what you get.
Exactly.
This is how this scene happens. This is what happened in the book.
And
With
this
the
is
film, it's wrong.
and often, yeah, wrong. That's the word, right? This is why this film is wrong, and this is what's wrong about this film, or because of all these. Anyway, this is exactly what we are not doing, because I think that there are two important misconceptions that underlie that entire approach to thinking about adaptations. The first idea is that to say that this is wrong is to ignore the fact that the adaptation is in fact a work of art on its own ground. It is not merely the same work of art transformed into a new medium. It is an entirely new work of art, which is related to the original, but which stands on its own as an independent work.
And the second?
And the second,
You mean-
yeah, I can do that.
Then-
Of course, this
and
is
this-
us completely winging spontaneously who's
Oh,
saying
yeah.
what.
Sometimes that's better.
Yeah.
And the second is that we don't actually think that it's at all possible to do a one-for-one replacement.
Yeah.
The ways that you tell a story in a text are incredibly different from the ways that you tell a story in a film. I might even give the example of the dress or something, just because it's a quick way to understand what that might mean. But the other problem that we ran into, I shouldn't say problem, the other opportunity that we think that this show could bring us is a way to discuss adaptation that hasn't happened before, because the terminology that does exist with adaptation studies is quite limited and has a wild range of definition within it. So something like a close adaptation, a loose adaptation, or inspired by, that can host
It means very
a
different things in
plethora
different
of-
situations.
of different kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we wanted to come up with some different terminology that we've been working on for the last couple of years that works a little bit better for what we're going to engage with.
Yeah. So an illustration of terminology that we will use is we like to think about adaptations and think about the different types of relationships that the adaptation has back to the original work. We've identified three core categories of adaptations. The first category of adaptation is what we call a direct adaptation. That's when you have an original story and you are retelling that story in a different mode. So this is it's going to be another version of the same story. That's a direct adaptation, and very many adaptations fall into this category. The second category of adaptations are what I call fill-in-the-blank adaptations, where you're writing a new story, like much of what you're writing, many of the characters that you're writing are invented. They're not in the original, but you're operating within the world of the original, and you're also there's also an expectation of consistency on some level, right, between the new story that you're writing and the original story that exists. But there are some very different expectations on a fill-in-the-blank adaptation compared to a direct adaptation. And finally, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we'll come back to this, but I think we should have one or two examples.
Yeah,
for
we
each
do
of
need to
these.
give examples for each of those. And then, of course, we have what we call a modulation adaptation. A modulation can be either direct or it can be fill in the blanks, but it's retelling the story or adding to the story, but doing it in a completely different, like deliberately shifting the context. And here examples are really easy to give. Things like, this has been done with Shakespeare many, many times. Things like West Side Story, or Taming of the Shrew, 10 Things I Hate About You.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
Clueless.
And of course, Clueless as a modulation adaptation of Jane Austen. Yes. And so then, yeah, go ahead.
We think we're kind of ready at that point to wrap up into this next bit, because I think so. I mean, we'll
I think
flush it
so.
out a tiny bit, but like, so the purpose of this series is for us to give a demonstrative example of adaptation analysis using our methods. So we're going to illustrate different ways that we engage with visual storytelling and what that means for the original text. So this is us considering adaptation as a work on its own, but understanding that it comes from something that may be beloved and highly emotive, but we're taking some of that emotion out and bringing just curiosity into the analysis.
And that's where the real fun is. Once you separate the adaptation enough to consider it as a work of art on its own grounds, then examining the relationship between the two of them becomes much more freeing and much more fun, because you're thinking in terms not of what it gets right or what it gets wrong, but what are the choices that the adaptation is making? How is it telling its story? And what story is it telling through its own storytelling tools, which are different than the storytelling tools that the original story in a different medium had?
See, that's the fun part. That's also where I start to worry. Like when we actually record it, like I don't remember what I just said, but that felt right. Like
Fortunately, we're
luckily we did
recording
record.
this,
I
so
was gonna say, I'm like, good thing we're recording this. We can just watch it on
yeah,
YouTube.
yeah.
But that doesn't work well for us. We tend not to rewatch what we've just recorded. We just do it again, and eventually we'll get something
Well,
that
maybe
works.
we can get our note takers to get us to make us a little script based on what we
That'd
just
be
said.
great.
Yeah,
Karen, game on.
yeah.
Okay, so an example for direct, like Romeo and Juliet. Like, do we want to keep on
Let's
Shakespearean?
see. No, let's do. Let's say the Lord of the Rings, because I'm willing to concede that it's a direct. Uh, it's direct. Whether it's close or not is what I would, but it's definitely a direct one. And we could even give the Rings of Power as a fill in the blank example if we wanted to go
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Um, uh, yeah.
How about one more for each one that
Yeah.
is,
Non-Tolkien. Um, uh,
I mean,
there's so many. Obviously, there's so many examples of direct
I'm
adaptation.
trying
It's
to
hard to
think
pick
like
one.
Disney, because let's go into a different like genre. So if we did like, any of the fairy tales,
Well,
that's,
yeah.
I know,
Well,
I
it's
know,
interesting. It's interesting.
that's more of a modulate.
Yeah, it can be. Um,
Mm,
Sometimes quite self-consciously a modulation.
yeah,
Um, I want to do a non-Shakespeare one. And here's the primary reason. Well, yeah. Um, Shakespeare. I love the Shakespeare examples for the modulation because there's so many of those, and people know
mm,
them pretty well. Um, but Shakespeare for direct adaptation is trickier because, like, they're using the script. It's adapting a play into a film is a totally different adaptation
yeah,
situation than adapting a novel, and like a novel, or
yeah.
as Tolkien would say, a heroic romance into a film. Um, so yeah, the To Kill a Mockingbird film, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there are literally thousands of examples we
Oh,
could give here.
millions.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the point of it is not to have like the perfect example. It's to have one that people immediately can go, oh, okay.
yeah,
Just wanted to have like a massive wide
right.
range of
Um,
understanding of what that means.
if we wanted a recent film, we could say Dune. Dune is a direct
Yeah.
adaptation. That was very popular. Um, if we wanted one that was non-sci-fi fantasy, just we could. Let's see, what's a recent direct adaptation of a non? Again, there's like any
All
number
the
of them.
light you cannot see.
Yeah, my problem is I'm not going to have seen many of them, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
This is a list I can look up
Okay,
later.
okay.
Okay.
Let's
X.
something else.
Yep.
Oh brother, where art thou? Okay, that's a modulation. Yes, that's a good
That's a
modulation. Oh
good
brother, where art
modulation.
thou? Yes, yes, excellent. Yeah, Stephen King adaptation. There's a bunch of
Oh,
direct Steve, like The Shining is a direct adaptation. There you go.
Shawshank Redemption. I don't know. Shawshank and Green Mile are both short stories. Would we?
Yeah.
I'd still call that a direct. It might be a little more fill in the blank, but it was mostly direct.
The Shining. Sorry, I was thinking about The Shining because I just read
Sorry,
The Shining recently and was
I'm back
thinking
over
about
there.
the film. Last Halloween, we made Matthias watch The Shining. Because we were doing like,
How'd
let's
that
do
go?
a scary movie, and he'd never seen it. I'm like, well, you've got to see The Shining. So we made Matthias watch The Shining, and then I was like, I've actually never read the book. I'm going to read the book, and I read the book immediately afterwards. So I knew the film well, and read the book for the first time after, and I was
And
like, whoa, that was amazing, just amazing to think about.
right?
Yeah.
Like when you don't have to do it as work, like I genuinely love seeing the film and then
Hmm.
reading the book. You get so much more. It's like Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
okay. Another fill in the blank example. David, I am so going to resist the temptation to talk about the book Shining and what's interesting and different about it. But yes. Hunger Games, yeah, that is another good example of a direct adaptation. Um,
But it's another fantasy, so I don't know. That might change.
yeah, yeah.
Fill in the
Uh,
blank.
um,
Star Wars,
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
But it's also kind of a direct adaptation of other texts and whatever. It's complicated. Um,
But Star Wars is a tough one because there isn't an original text, but man, they fill in a lot of gaps.
yes. Yeah, you could argue that the Clone Wars show is a fill in the blanks adaptation of the films.
Yeah? Yeah? I don't think we'll have the time to go into that nuance, but I agree with you.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to put that as an X for now because I want to go to bed soon.
Yep. Agreed. Oh yeah, it's getting late.
Um,
Um,
but that feels really good. We just need a little like end note.
yeah. So the end note is talking about choices and segueing into. So at the very end, we segue back into like again, like so, like when we consider the adaptations as works on their own, and we can put them side by side with the original text, and we can compare and contrast and think about the storytelling. Really, really interesting things happen. So our transition is that we are what we're doing in this series.
We're
Right.
about to do
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
exactly. So in this series of videos, we are going to do a case study of this approach.
I was just thinking of a mashup of our name, the Polson approach,
Right.
the Olark approach, the Olsen Park approach.
The Olsen Park approach. Yes. Um, uh, yes. Yeah. Um, would we want to say? Well, no, because anything we say next is just the next section. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, we just say, right. We're gonna do a case study of our approach, where we'll explore two separate visual adaptations of a beloved original novel: Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
Sorry for how loud my typing is. I'll bring the wireless keyboard down next time.
uh, and then that can, because then we could do like a title screen or something if we want, to be like Pride and Prejudice, or and then we can begin afresh the next section with Jane Austen published Pride and Prejudice in 1813, like boom, and off we go, and talk about it, and then explaining why is it
Yeah.
that we're doing it.
And like we do with Rings and Realms, I think we do this first bit and we just pause after each section so our editor can have a minute to kind of break this down.
Yep.
And then we take a big pause after point one. But I kind of think we could just talk through two and see how we get, maybe
Yeah.
even three, and
Yeah.
just see where we go.
Okay. Okay,
Okay. So we're on
cool.
next week,
We're on next week.
not on the following week.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. I will be away on the 8th of December, but I will be here next week on the 1st. So we will
Fantastic.
play next week. We'll do, as I say, I think it's going to be short. Like if we, I really do believe we can get that first section. Like the final cut of it will be like
Mm-hmm.
5 to 7 minutes at most, maybe less.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can transition. Because I think what we would want our goal to be something like, uh, no more than 10-15 minutes pre-analysis, right?
Yeah.
So sections 1 through 4 in 10-15 minutes total is what we'd be
Ideally,
shooting
yeah.
for.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, when we start getting through it, it might be shorter, it might be longer. I don't want to like be reckless or too time focused on it. I don't want to be like, this has to be 5 minutes because it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good goal for attention span. And the if we're thinking of delivering like an actual episode, 30 to 45 minutes for a total episode is a really nice like first piece for somebody to be able to get an idea of what they want from us
Yes.
or could get from us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll have a think about backgrounds. I think for this first episode, we could have the same background, and it could just be like one of these original covers or something, and then maybe we can use one of Marjorie's
Yeah. Miriam's, you
pieces.
mean? Yeah.
Miriam,
Miriam
sorry,
Ellis's
Miriam's
paintings. Yeah. Yeah.
pieces.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry, Miriam.
It's okay.
But yeah, maybe put one of those back, and then maybe we can change to the film, like film stills or something, or DVD covers as we talk. But we'll see.
Maybe I mean, it would be kind of on brand for you to have like a film background and me to have a book background. Just to
Yeah,
like that way, like film and book are both on screen the whole time. Like that'd be kind of fun.
especially if we are going to be discussing each in their turn,
Hmm.
then that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We could do that. All right. Good. Yeah. So we'll dress
Yeah.
rehearsal next time.
Sounds good.
Very good.
Thanks, guys.
All
That
right.
was
Thanks,
fun.
everybody. See you guys next week.
Take care.
Bye now.